Sharon on the line from Black and Gold Banneret. It's the SB Nation platform for UCF athletics. And we have run down the high points. Now we've got to go to the low points. So again, whatever. Yeah, Jeff, we've got to do it.
We've had
fair
some
and balanced and neutral right here. However you want to term it. Again, they don't have to be the most significant losses. Maybe they just carry more value with you. But to you, the most impactful, most excruciating, gut-wrenching losses that kind of still stay with you.
A lot of those losses, like I mentioned, that 90, 97, 98 area were pretty heartbreaking. Some of them were on controversial calls. Some of them were on games where UCF just made one mistake, and that was enough to end it. I think you go back to 1998, and that was Dante Culpepper's senior year. UCF goes 9-2. And this was the first real heartbreaker because UCF was an independent, but they were making national news with Dante. They had only lost one game throughout the season. That was to Drew Brees and Purdue, at Purdue. And so at this point, it was first game in November. So UCF was 7-1. And they went to Auburn on November 7th. They go to Jordan-Hare. And Auburn was bad that year. Terry Bowden had been fired a couple years before. It was Auburn's homecoming, but it was a lost season for Auburn, and they were ripe for the picking. So UCF goes to Auburn, turns the ball over 5 times in this game, and still had the lead 6-3. And I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, they were up 6-3 with 2 minutes to go and had a 1st and 10 inside the Auburn 20. And Dante Culpepper, in the most inexplicable manner that you could possibly imagine, fumbles a snap from shotgun, and Auburn falls on it. 2 plays later, Auburn's in the end zone, and they win the game 10-6. Had UCF won that game in 1998, the word was they were going to get an invitation to the Hawaii Bowl and play in their first ever bowl game in school history. They went on to actually beat Ball State and New Mexico in their final 2 games, but then their season was over after November 21st, and they finished 9-2. Had they finished 10-1, they would have gone to the Hawaii Bowl. And then in addition to that, that was the year that on the final day, on the conference championship game day, you had then number 2 UCLA lose to Miami in that wild game down in the Orange Bowl where Edgerrin James ran for 300 yards. And that knocked UCLA out of the number 2 slot. Kansas State got beat by Texas A&M in the Big 12 championship game when they would have been the ostensible number 2. So they get knocked down a peg or 2. And it set off this series of unfortunate events that ended up knocking 9-2 UCF, an independent at that time, out of a bowl game. And it would have been the first bowl game in the school's history. We've had some bad seasons. 2-0 for seasons under George O'Leary, 1 in 2004 in his first year, 1 in 2015 his last year. But when you talk about heartbreaking losses, UCF there's another one that comes to mind. UCF finally gets to their first bowl game in 2000 and in the 2005 season. They finish first in their division in Conference USA, lose the conference championship game at home to what was a very good Tulsa team at the time, and but still get invited to a bowl game. They finally get to the Hawaii Bowl, and they're playing against the University of Nevada, Chris Ault. And this was before Colin Kaepernick, but still Nevada was a pretty good program and has been for a long time. UCF is down 2 touchdowns. This is on Christmas Eve night. They're down 2 touchdowns in the final moments, and Brandon Marshall goes off, helps lead UCF to 2 late touchdown drives to tie the game. And they recovered an onside kick in between that, and UCF ties the game and sends it to overtime, tied at 42. Nevada scores, kicks the extra point. UCF is down 7. UCF scores a touchdown a couple plays later. And then on the extra point, Matt Prater was the kicker for UCF at that time. He holds the NFL record for the longest field goal in history, 64 yards. longtime NFL kicker. Actually, he's still kicking in the NFL with the Detroit Lions right now, as of this recording. Misses the extra point in overtime, and UCF loses their first bowl game 49-48, all the way out in Hawaii on Christmas Eve night. And it was beyond heartbreaking. That was really, I thought, for me, and I think a lot of the more recent fans, the most heartbreaking loss, devastating, gut-wrenching, spleen-breaking loss you could possibly imagine in your first ever bowl game in school history.
Now, I vaguely remember that game, but I can guarantee that I was watching it, not necessarily live, because my customary approach to Christmas Eve was, of course, spending that time with family and with kids. But the kids go to bed. I've got the Hawaii Bowl on DVR, and I'm watching the Hawaii Bowl until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, while everyone's wrapping presents, right?
Yep. And wow, 49-48, yes. And we could go through so many games and highlight so many opponents, but I'm just astonished. Again, I'm just mesmerized by these schedules, Jeff. I'm going to highlight the 2000 schedule, the September schedule in 1999, rather. Purdue was the opener.
Yep.
Excuse me. A little editing there. Purdue was the opener. And again, this is not the marginalized Purdue program we've seen over the last 10 years. This is the Drew Brees Purdue team on September 4th, followed by Florida, Georgia Tech, and Georgia. That was the September schedule in 1999.
Yeah. Yeah, it was number 22 Purdue, number 4 Florida, at number 4 Florida, at number 12 Georgia Tech, at number 11 Georgia. And by the way, later on in that year, they also played at Auburn again and lost the game. So the Georgia game that year really stands out because that was what they called around here the burglary between the hedges, because UCF again was driving. They were down 1 point in this game. But we're in field goal range. And this was post Dante Culpepper. And they go for, or they're trying to throw a pass to the end zone. And Kenny Clark was a receiver who actually played in the Arena League for a while, was tackled out of bounds by a Georgia player. Now, for some reason, I think the Georgia people, they have some control on YouTube because there's no visual evidence of this anywhere. I've been looking everywhere of it for years. But so Kenny Clark is wide open. He gets tackled out of bounds. A flag comes down. And UCF is like, oh, man. All right, it's going to be 1st and goal, and we're down 1. We've got this game wrapped in Athens. And the call was offensive pass interference. And it knocked UCF out of field goal range. They turned the ball over on downs, and that was that. It was a game that if that happened today in the era of Twitter, it probably could have broken Twitter.
I don't recall that, but I will take your word for it, and hopefully your search will find you to a destination at some point where somebody has found something that they can upload to
someone
social
somewhere
media.
Has that. Someone
They
has
probably
to have that.
Yep.
Georgia could not have scrubbed all copies of it. I'm convinced of it. They have to be somewhere.
Maybe you can maybe find some Georgia Tech or Tennessee or Florida fan that may have that for some reason and want to turn that over to you for a certain price.